At all. Good afternoon, and thank you everyone for joining SmartXPD today. I'm Patrick LoSasso. I'm president of SmartXPD and coordinator of our Parkinson's Life discussion group. We started a few months ago with the theme of coming together to strengthen and share, and I'm really excited to announce that we're expanding into education. We'll be bringing guest speakers in to cover topics like speech therapy, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that at the end because we've got a great speaker coming in that's going to be talking about relationships and communication, motivation, mindfulness, exercise, how to live better, and many other topics that were actually suggested by all of you. So this is a place where we can unite, come together, strengthen, and share. I'm also offering 9 live Parkinson's exercise classes online. I've got an energetic class, a gentle chair class, boxing for Parkinson's. I've got a fall prevention and balance class I call the Scramble, and yoga now. So, and I don't do the yoga. We bring in a yoga specialist who actually has Parkinson's, Marika. She's phenomenal. So check that out. We don't charge for these classes, but if you're able to help, it's greatly appreciated. We depend on your generosity to continue, and you'll find instructions on how you can help in all of the emails and the exchanges that we have. Before we jump in, one more time, please stay muted. So today, I'm so happy to welcome my friend, Marty Acevedo, to our Parkinson's Life education program. Proper nutrition is an incredibly important component for people with Parkinson's as we strive to optimize our quality of life. So congratulations to all of you for showing up here and becoming proactive in the management of your condition. Marty is a registered dietitian nutritionist and was an active member of the critical care health team at Tri-City Medical Center in Oceanside, California. She provided advice and nutritional recommendations for patients as they recover from critical illness or injury. Marty authored 2 home study courses for registered dietitians and other healthcare practitioners. Diagnosed with Parkinson's disease in 2010, she found a new purpose and began her second career as a volunteer, mentor, and advocate. She serves as president of the board of directors for Parkinson's Association of San Diego, as an ambassador for the Davis Phinney Foundation, as an ambassador for the Aware and Care Initiative for Parkinson's Foundation, and as an advocacy ambassador for the Michael J. Fox Foundation on how she finds time to exercise. It's just crazy. Marty believes in living her best life with Parkinson's by finding purpose, staying positive, exercising, socializing, and practicing mindfulness. She strives to help others find their way to living their best lives with Parkinson's. So please join me in welcoming Marty Acevedo.
Okay.
All right.
So today we're going to talk about nutrition and Parkinson's disease, and it's all about balance. My motto has always been as a dietitian and living my life is that there's no bad foods and moderation is really good in all things. So that'll be kind of the overriding theme of what we'll talk about today. The overview is we'll talk about special diets and if they're helpful or not. Supplementation, can diet and nutrition help with symptoms or side effects from medications? And what are the nutritional complications that we may face as people with Parkinson's? So can a diet cure Parkinson's? There's lots of claims on the internet, Facebook, and all over everywhere that we can cure Parkinson's. You just have to take mega doses of these nutrients and your Parkinson's will be cured. No cure has yet been found. That's a false statement. If anyone is suggesting that you do that, run from that recommendation. There may be some of what they're saying that's based in fact, but then they've taken it a little bit too far and they're making claims that aren't accurate. Most healthcare professionals and most movement disorder specialists and anyone involved with Parkinson's recommend a healthy diet. And that usually means a Mediterranean diet and lifestyle. So I want to talk a little bit about diets. If you start a diet, you tend to go off a diet. So I like to refer to healthy Mediterranean lifestyle or healthy lifestyles rather than going on a diet. But there are some principles of a Mediterranean type diet or lifestyle that we'll talk about now. In the Mediterranean area of the world, they eat more fish and seafood and less red meats and chicken and poultry, although those are still okay. They use olive oil instead of canola oil or corn oil or any of the other oils that are available. Turmeric is a spice that's found in mustard, and it's in a lot of curry, a lot of other types of things, and that seems to have a protective effect because it's an anti-inflammatory. Rosemary is another seasoning that is helpful in the Mediterranean diet. They focus on fresh fruits and vegetables, multi-grain breads and cereals, phytochemicals, antioxidants, and carotenoids and beta carotene. There's some people think that this diet or this lifestyle, it can be neuroprotective and it could slow the progression of the disease. I haven't seen research that supports that, but it makes sense to me. This diet, I'll be dating myself, but I learned in elementary school all about the food pyramid. This looks an awful lot like the food pyramid that I learned in 3rd grade. So we like to focus on plant-based foods, and that means for a lot of people that they become vegetarian or vegan. There's no need to do that if that's not what you prefer to do. You can still eat your normal diet, just to make better choices, like using healthy fats like olive oil, herbs and spices. We talked about the meats and all of that. Nuts, low-fat dairy products, red wine in moderation and with meals, but don't start drinking if you don't already. And then exercise, which we all know is very important. And it has been shown to be the only therapy that we can do that can slow progression of our Parkinson's. So what are phytochemicals and antioxidants? Phytochemicals act on free radicals, and they get rid of the things that disrupt the work of the cells in our body, and they help our cells in our body to operate more efficiently and effectively. There are things called free radicals that circulate in our blood as part of the metabolism of nutrients, of toxins and such. And those are things that can destroy a cell. Phytochemicals and antioxidants work to inactivate or capture those free radicals. I like to think of I'm going to date myself again, the Pac-Man video game, and they just go along and they eat up those things. Foods that have strong antioxidant properties include berries, and we'll talk a little bit more about berries because they're pretty special. Pomegranates, cranberries, grapes, yellow and dark green leafy vegetables. My favorite, dark chocolate, red wine, green tea, and then omega-3 fatty acids can be helpful as well, and that's fishes and nuts. The deep cold water fishes that have a little bit more fat in them than the other type of fish, but like salmon, halibut, herring, mackerel, sardines, tuna, all those things are antioxidants. So what's this about berries? There's a study done in mice that found that farnesol, which is a natural compound found in berries, has antioxidant properties. We know that berries are good antioxidant foods. The mice were handled in a way that gave them Parkinson's disease, and they were fed this diet with berries, and they had improvement in strength and coordination over time. They actually doubled the number of healthy dopaminergic producing neurons and 50% more of another protective protein in the brain. Now, the study needs to be replicated in people and clinical trials and such, but this is kind of promising that if you eat berries, you could actually increase the dopamine in your brain potentially, and then have a neuroprotective effect from other compounds. So this is basically a Mediterranean lifestyle. You can see all the different foods that I've mentioned so far, and it's just, for me, it's intuitive eating and eating the things you enjoy. Now, a lot of people have said, I need to follow a keto diet. There was a study that said that this diet was awesome for Parkinson's, and that's true. There was one study completed on people in Samoa. There were 5 people in this study, which is very low end, as you will. And they followed a very strict keto diet, which is 90% fat, 2% carbs, and the rest protein. So they basically were eating butter balls and fat type things. They stayed on this diet for 28 days a month. They found vast improvement in their motor symptoms, but they couldn't rule out the placebo effect. People with Parkinson's have a very strong placebo effect, and it can last for up to a year. And if we think something will work, often it does. So the keto diet, they could only eat meat and eggs, saturated fats, non-starchy vegetables, and maybe this was partly the reason it helped with the leafy greens and cruciferous vegetables. Low carb foods, berries again, nuts and seeds, whole dairy products if not lactose intolerant, and then beverages. And they avoided all of these types of foods, like the things we like to eat, like bread and potatoes and fish, poultry and other things. So what happened with this is that they sustained their improvement in their the scoring that the physicians look at when we do our testing for Parkinson's, and those scores stayed improved for 28 more days, and then they went back to where they were before. So potentially this diet could help. Many people follow a paleo diet, and many people follow a keto diet in the US, but it's modified. They're both very high protein, low carb. Initial stages of keto allows no carb and puts the body into ketosis. So ketosis is a state where the body's only using glucose and ketone bodies for fuel. And with ketosis, the body goes into a stress state. The liver works overtime to break down that protein to produce ketone bodies and glucose. And the theory with the keto diet is that the liver could break down alpha-synuclein, which we know is a culprit in development and progression of some types of Parkinson's. Less alpha-synuclein theoretically could then slow the progression of PD. Another theory is that ketone bodies are more efficient for the brain, making it more able to fight against inflammatory agents, toxins, and alpha-synuclein. So those are both theories about why this diet worked for these people. The diet, so it could be neuroprotective, it may slow progression, it may reduce alpha-synuclein, and 5 people did well after 28 days on the diet. It's really incredibly difficult to follow. Can you imagine only eating meat and butter for a month? It's very monotonous. It can worsen symptoms of constipation, which many of us deal with, and diarrhea can occur because your diet's so vastly changed. It's very deficient in nutrients, B vitamins, vitamin C, and some minerals. And when I was working in the hospital in the critical care unit, we tried to avoid causing ketosis in our patients at all costs because it can damage the liver and kidneys. So there's a lot more research to be done for anyone to start recommending a keto diet. Intermittent fasting has become a buzzword in the last couple of years. And what that means is that you fast for a period of time every day. Most of us fast while we're sleeping or during the hours that we should be sleeping. And this diet goes a little bit further than that. So it allows you to eat for 8 hours a day or 6 to 8 hours a day. And that's usually between 11 and 7, say, and you fast for all the other hours of the day. And it seems to work at the cellular level where the powerhouse of the cell is working, and where some of us with certain types of Parkinson's have genetic problems in the mitochondrial level, and that can cause the Parkinson's in us. I am one of those people. So there's less alpha-synuclein burden, there's less neurodegeneration, and improved insulin sensitivity. That's important because there's some thought that Parkinson's is somehow a type of diabetes, and we have a reduced insulin sensitivity and ability to tolerate glucose. So they found that this intermittent fasting helped to protect against autonomic dysfunction like neurogenic orthostatic hypotension, urinary frequency, urgency, all those types of things, that non-motor problems that we experience. And also their cognitive decline was lessened. As again, I said, there are no bad foods, but some foods are better than others, and you can make better choices and things, but using moderation in all things is really important. So let's talk about vitamins. The B vitamins, which are thiamine, riboflavin, niacin, pantothenic acid, pyridoxine, biotin, and cyanocobalamin. That's, you know them as B1, B2, B3, B6, B12. They're all necessary for metabolism, and they all help to sustain the nervous system. B6 may reduce the risk of developing PD, but large doses greater than 50 milligrams can reduce the absorption of levodopa. So if you're following the recommendations of some of the things you might have seen online, and you're taking a mega dose, which is a large, more than 50 milligrams dose of B6, which is pyridoxine, it might affect the way your medication works in managing your symptoms. A, C, and E are antioxidants. Vitamin C can be neuroprotective. However, if you oversupplement it, it's dangerous. We may recall that the pirates back in the 1700s would ravage countries and stuff. And so at one point, there was one pirate ship that was sailing around the seas, and they noticed that all the people were bleeding in their mouth. They had been eating a lot of oranges, and then actually mega dosing their vitamin C from the oranges, and then they stopped because they ran out. So they had become tolerant to this higher dose of vitamin C, and they developed scurvy, which is a deficiency of vitamin C, and it caused bleeding and other problems. Vitamins A and C, E are fat soluble, which means our liver stores them. And if you take too much of it over too long of a period of time, that can be harmful. And then we know that serum levels of vitamin D are often lower in people with Parkinson's. So it's important to check for bone health. And most doctors are pretty good about checking vitamin D levels. Your primary care would be the one to do that. You need about 20 minutes of sunlight a day. That's how we get vitamin D, or it's supplemented in dairy products. But check with your doctor to determine if you need a supplement. There's no need to supplement with vitamin D unless you're deficient. So it's always best to get nutrients from the foods we eat. Vitamins work synergistically. They work together. And there's this thing called the Krebs cycle, which is how the cells break down and provide energy for the body. And everything works together. Potassium and phosphorus and all the vitamins work together. And if one nutrient is missing, then that breaks down and there becomes harm. A good reputable multivitamin with minerals, if you feel your diet is not adequate, is sufficient, because many of us are at risk for osteoporosis or osteopenia. You might want to include calcium in your vitamin and mineral supplement, because we certainly don't want to develop those conditions and fall and break a hip or a wrist. Taking an individual vitamin, like taking niacin, can be hazardous. It's probably not useful, and it's really expensive. And all you're going to do with the water-soluble vitamins is have very expensive urine. So, because you get rid of that every day if you don't use it. Supplements are not regulated. The FDA doesn't say the vitamin A has to contain these specific items. They're not regulated like medication. So it can say it could be anything that's there. Some other things that you need to talk about, and I get questions about, are fava beans. And my husband always reminds me of that Silence of the Lambs, because the one character liked fava beans in Chianti. But fava beans are a natural source of levodopa. However, you'd have to eat a lot of fava beans to get the amount of levodopa that you need to manage your symptoms. And we don't know, you still wouldn't know if it's enough or the right quality, or if the availability of the levodopa from the bean is consistent. So it's not the same as you can't take eat a cup of fava beans and have it equate to your levodopa dose. And I would find it very challenging to eat that many fava beans during a day. I talked a little bit about turmeric. It's neuroprotective, and it seems to be an anti-inflammatory. Rosemary is also neuroprotective. Soy contains a chemical called genistein, and that is also neuroprotective. There's no recommendations on eating soy or adding soy to your diet. Caffeine, though, appears to be neuroprotective in men and in postmenopausal women. And tea is also neuroprotective and can help. I mentioned the red wine, and low to moderate intake of beer may reduce risk, but if you take too much, it increases risk. So these are just all little tidbits to put in your back pocket and remember. Like I said, there's no magic bullet. There's no special diet that will help everything that has to do with Parkinson's or delay the progression of Parkinson's. But there are some things like anti-inflammatories and the other things we talked about that may help. This is a type of bacteria, H. pylori. It's found in the stomach, and about half of the people in the world have it. 100% of the people in third world countries have H. pylori. And it's associated with ulcers and some types of colon cancer. You can treat it with antibiotics. But H. pylori can interfere with our Parkinson's meds. If you have this bacteria, it can decrease the absorption of your Cinemet or whatever type of carbidopa levodopa you might be taking. So if it's not absorbing, if that's not being absorbed, then you will have motor fluctuations and off time. So that if you're having trouble with off time and you've tried limiting the protein around the time that you take your medication, and we'll talk about that, and you're still having a lot of not much on time and more off time, it might be worth your while to mention this to your movement disorder specialist. So protein and carbidopa levodopa. About 30% of us have no interaction between levodopa and protein. So that means 70% do. But levodopa competes with the protein that we eat, the meat, the milk, cheeses, those types of things for absorption in the small intestine. And if that happens, or if you're noticing that you're off after you take your medications, or you're not getting the effects that you usually get, then talk to your specialist, your movement disorder specialist or neurologist about about the timing of your meals related to the timing of your medication. So if you limit your protein when you take your carbidopa levodopa, that will enhance absorption. But you don't want to be continually fighting, chasing your medication and your eating, so that can become a real problem. Most people recommend taking your medication on an empty stomach, half hour to an hour prior to consuming a protein-containing meal, or 1 to 2 hours after eating a meal or snack containing protein. So that means, a lot of people have nausea and vomiting actually with carbidopa levodopa, so they need to eat something. So it's perfectly okay to take your medication with a cracker, some juice, a banana, applesauce, just not a sandwich with tuna on it, or some, the protein-containing foods. MAOI-B inhibitors. Generally, there's no issue with nutrition or food. There is a class of drugs that's used for different indications. It's used for mental health issues. That is MAOI-A inhibitors that contain tyramine, and in rare cases can cause very dangerous hypertensive crisis when taken with certain foods: aged cheeses, sauerkraut, kimchi, soy products, cured or fermented meats, red wine, and tap beer. The MAOI-B inhibitors don't really interact with those foods. A movement disorder specialist once told me you would have to eat a whole wheel of brie with a case of red wine to run any risk of interaction. And hopefully none of you are going to run out and do that. So when your pharmacist tells you don't eat sauerkraut with this medication, you can ask your doctor about that, just to be sure that he doesn't recommend, or she doesn't recommend against that. So we do know that one of the prodromal or pre-Parkinson's symptoms that can occur is loss of smell. And that happens in about 90% of us. I'm lucky, I've retained my sense of smell. But this happens, 10 to 20 years before we start to have our other symptoms of Parkinson's starting. And it's thought that alpha-synuclein, that protein that we keep hearing about, is in the nose, and that can contribute. That's part of the reason that the symptom occurs. We also found that happened a lot with COVID. And people lost their sense of smells and their smell. And there's some worry that in long haul COVID that will eventually lead to Parkinson's development. Not being able to smell really affects the quality of your life. And it's a real problem. And people don't understand, well, so what? You can't smell, but it just really affects how you live life and how you eat, because there's a very close link between the sense of smell and taste. Think about if you're making spaghetti sauce and you smell the garlic and the basil and the other herbs and how good that smells, and it kind of triggers some reflexes within you that makes you hungry and it makes you look forward to that meal. And so when you have the hyposmia or loss of sense of smell and then accompanying ageusia, which is loss of sense of taste, you typically don't really want to eat because nothing smells good because you can't smell it. Things don't taste the same. And this can lead to weight loss, malnutrition, and depression, which are all things that have negative outcomes for us. The things you can do is to season your foods more heavily, use marinades, dry rubs, those types of things. Constipation. 90% of us deal with constipation issues. And it may be one of the first symptoms of Parkinson's. It can be, you may have had Parkinson's for 30 years, 20 years before you ever had another symptom. It's really, 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 really important to maintain your hydration. That means drinking 2 liters of fluid a day. And that's not caffeine, because that dehydrates you, but things like water. Water is the best thing. The other thing is exercise. And Patrick's real good at helping us with that. You really need to exercise daily for many reasons, but constipation is one of those. And then you might consider a fiber supplement. Check with your doctor again to make sure that you're getting the right type of fiber, because some fiber can cause more constipation. But the best way to get fiber in your diet is through that Mediterranean type of lifestyle where you're eating fresh fruits and vegetables, whole grains and cereals, and other things with fiber. About 25% of us have irritable bowel syndrome, which might be irritable bowel syndrome diarrhea or constipation or mixed. Most of the people with Parkinson's have constipation, but there are some of us who have IBS-D, which is pain, discomfort, bloating, diarrhea, some constipation, and urgency. So if you're experiencing any of those symptoms, make sure you talk to your doctor about it. There are specialists called neurogastroenterologists that can help. They specialize in motility issues. And if you're having a lot of issues with constipation, like bowel obstruction, or you just feel uncomfortable all the time, it might be worth a visit to the neurogastroenterologist. I know there's 2 in Los Angeles and there's 1 in San Diego, and hopefully there's more around the country and the world. But if you do have irritable bowel syndrome, look at your diet and kind of take a journal of what you're eating. I have irritable bowel syndrome, and it's exacerbated by lactose-containing foods like milk, ice cream, and cheese. So I don't eat those foods, or I take a lactase supplement. Mediterranean diet can certainly help. High fat and high sugar foods can cause dumping and problems, or make you constipated. Again, stay hydrated, drink water all day long. And like Patrick is drinking his water right now. Exercise every day, get your heart going, I can't emphasize how important exercise is. And then mindfulness, reduce the stress in your life. Be aware of what's happening in the moment, and try not, this is hard to say, but try not to worry about what will happen tomorrow or next week, or what you said last week that might be bothering you. Nausea is pretty common, and it can occur as a side effect of medications, especially Sinemet, carbidopa, levodopa. There are alternatives to those medications, or they can give you another extra carbidopa to help to alleviate the nausea. And that usually dissipates that, especially it happens a lot when you first start taking a medication, and then usually the nausea dissipates after time. Take medications with foods containing carbohydrates you talked about. Ginger is really helpful. A lot of people who have nausea when they're pregnant use ginger or peppermint tea to help alleviate the nausea. And don't eat big meals. Try small, frequent meals, 5 or 6 times a day. Our body likes that better anyway. That can be helpful. Lightheadedness and dizziness, that's really a scary thing that can happen. It happens when our autonomic nervous system is impacted by our Parkinson's disease. Parkinson's affects every single part of us. It's not just, the outward motor symptoms. It's everything that we do and sustains us. Neurogenic orthostatic hypotension is happens when you stand up from a seated or lying down position and your blood pressure drops by 10 to 20 points, and you get dizzy, lightheaded, and it can often cause falls and injury. So it's going to sound kind of counterintuitive about what to do about this, but stay well hydrated. Make sure you're staying hydrated, and add salt to your diet. Now, what dietitian has ever said add salt to your diet? That's pretty rare, but salt really does help. If you just add salt to your food when you eat or when you're cooking, you can increase that blood pressure, the top one, by 10 to 20 points. And that's enough to get you out of that cycle of the neurogenic orthostatic hypotension. Some medications, though, can cause the same effect. And if you're taking antihypertensive meds, which is for blood pressure, if you're taking that in combination with some of your Parkinson's meds, that's just setting you up for problems. So make sure that you talk to your movement disorder specialist or your neurologist to review your medications every time you see him. And there are medications that can treat the NOH. My dog is sleeping on the side there, but dogs could teach us a few things about sleeping, as could cats. We know that with Parkinson's, it's hard to sleep. We can't fall asleep, either can't fall asleep or we fall asleep okay, and then we wake up to go to the bathroom or whatever, and then we can't go back to sleep. Or we wake up at 4 in the morning and can't get back to sleep. I have REM sleep behavior disorder. I have very entertaining dreams that are very vivid that I remember every morning. It's like I go to the movies every night. Before I was treated, I was acting out those dreams. My husband woke up one morning and said, "Are you okay?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, your fingerprints were on my neck." So I had to act out a dream and had my hands around his neck. So my doctor said, well, we can treat you with a specific medication, or you can sleep in a separate room with the door locked from the outside. So I chose to be treated with medication. Sleep apnea is a real problem with people with Parkinson's, and we don't recognize it often, but that can really disrupt your sleep and your effectiveness of sleep and keep you from getting the recovery sleep. And then daytime sleepiness is something that happens with Parkinson's, and it can also happen with medication. The fatigue of Parkinson's, if you don't experience this, or even if you do and you tell someone else who says, "Oh yeah, everybody gets tired," well, the fatigue of Parkinson's is overwhelming exhaustion, and you can't explain it. You can't explain how it feels. It's hard to describe what triggers it, but there are things you can do with your nutrition that can help. As I mentioned, small frequent meals. Hydration is becoming an overriding theme in what I'm talking about. Balanced, healthy meals. Caffeine, and this says only until 3 o'clock, but if caffeine doesn't affect your ability to go to sleep, then you can keep that caffeine going all day. Chocolate as an energy booster, make sure it's dark chocolate. Exercise, another overriding theme, and take a nap if you're tired. It's okay. This is near and dear to my heart, this topic, weight management and malnutrition. As many as 30% of us are going to develop mild or moderate, with mild or moderate Parkinson's, are going to be at risk for malnutrition. Anybody that goes in the hospital is at risk for malnutrition because of the things that are done to them while they're there. It's stressful to be in the hospital, plus you're at bed rest. And the causes related to Parkinson's has many different causes. And we talked about decreased ability to eat because of the loss of sense of taste and smell, but we may also just not want to eat because we're depressed, or we have apathy, or we're constipated or nauseous. We just don't feel good. Tremor can increase calorie requirements, as can dyskinesia. I've had deep brain stimulation, and I gained and not an insignificant amount of weight after DBS because my tremor went away. The internal tremor went away, and I no longer had dyskinesia. And with dyskinesia and tremor, it can also make it harder to eat. So you might just give up and say, "Forget it, I don't want to do this." And then dysphagia, difficulty swallowing, puts you at risk for aspiration pneumonia, and it can also decrease the amount of food that you're taking in. So again, small, frequent meals, easy to eat foods, things that taste good, things that are moist and liquidy. Consider supplements like Boost or Ensure, and milkshakes with 5 scoops of ice cream. That's really helpful. And don't limit your diet if you're having trouble eating and maintaining your weight. Anything goes. If you want it, eat it. If you want some banana pudding, have some banana pudding. If you want, whatever sounds good, I've always said that's what your body's telling you that you need to do. So the opposite thing can also happen. As I mentioned, weight gain is pretty common after DBS surgery related to the energy expenditure thing, and weight gain of up to 20 pounds is common. I am a dietitian. I know how to eat and I know how to manage my weight. And the weight gain that I had was shocking to me, and it was very distressing because I was exercising more than I ever had and I was eating well, but I still gained the weight and I couldn't get a handle on it for a while. So my doctor said, well, would you rather not have DBS and have your symptoms, or would you rather have the weight gain? So I settled for the weight gain. But weight gain can also occur with certain medications like dopamine agonists and antidepressants. If you're taking those medications, review those with your doctor. And then if nothing's helping, moderation is good. If weight loss or maintenance is desired, limit your portions and limit high calorie foods. Of course, I mean, don't eat those the 5 scoops of ice cream every day, maybe just once every month or so. And then again, exercise. This dysphagia is really can be a very significant problem with people with Parkinson's and can really impact quality of life and length of life. Parkinson's affects every muscle in our body, and vocal cords are muscles. So the motor symptoms that we develop with bradykinesia, slowness of movement, rigidity, and weakness can cause your vocal cords to not work as effectively. So ask for a consult with a speech language pathologist, which Patrick mentioned is going to happen with this group. Be proactive. I don't really have a voice issue, but I have been involved with LSVT Loud and Speak Out, where I learned to speak loudly with intent, and just to be proactive and to keep my vocal cords strong before there's any issue. If you do have dysphagia or dysphagia, you may require a modification of food consistencies, baby food, pureed food, mixed. You may not want to have mixed foods like casseroles and stews are hard to eat because your body you can't process the liquid and the meat and the vegetables, and that can also often be difficult to swallow. What happens if you are having trouble with swallow is usually a modified barium swallow is ordered by your physician, where they test your ability to swallow with different types of consistency as foods, and they put a little bit of barium on it, and they can determine if it's going down your esophagus or down into your lungs, into creating aspiration pneumonia. And then the speech therapist would work with you to strengthen your vocal cords with exercises like you do with LSVT Loud or Speak Out, but also managing what you're dealing with the changes in food consistencies. If you are truly aspirating and there's not safe to eat, then tube feedings are usually recommended or required, and that can be devastating. I recently worked with a man who was told after his barium swallow, not a modified, that he needed a feeding tube by his neurologist and his gastroenterologist. He said, eating is my life. I mean, there's so much more to food and eating than just taking in and chewing and swallowing and processing. It's socialization. It just provides so many memories and happiness and so many things beyond eating. And he was devastated. So we worked together and got an order for a modified barium swallow. He was working with a speech therapist, and the modified barium swallow results were that he didn't need a tube feeding because he wasn't aspirating. So make sure you get the right type of barium swallow if you need one. If you don't treat dysphagia, it's severe enough, you can expect weight loss, malnutrition, and aspiration pneumonia. So that's that.
Well, Marty, thank you so much. If you want to stop the screen share, and we'll put it back here. I'll retake. Let's see here. All right. Well, I got a couple things to say, aside from thank you. Okay. Yeah, let's put our hands together for Marty. That was, look at that. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. I see a lot of familiar faces here, and it's good to see a lot of you. I haven't seen you in some time. So I've seen a lot of, first of all, let me just say that Marty has very generously agreed to provide to anybody who wants them the PowerPoint information, the PowerPoint. And I should have probably said that before I saw a bunch of people scrambling notes and stuff. So, well, you got your hand exercise in for the day if you were taking notes. But I just think that this was an incredibly comprehensive and generous presentation. Marty, the fact that you have Parkinson's, you were sharing so much about how it's affected you and your experience, I think brings a really reassuring and unique aspect to this. I gotta say, it was incredibly creative as well. I mean, anyone who can take a nutritional presentation and weave in pirates and Silence of the Lambs. I mean, that's kind of right up my, that was awesome to hear. I'm going to open this up to questions. We have one in chat as well. So here's the deal, everybody. You'll be able to unmute and mute yourself for questions. I did have one in the chat right now, so I'm going to jump to that first of all. And if you have questions, go ahead and unmute yourself. And again, we're recording today, so if you don't want to be seen, turn off your video. But I will be reposting this on the YouTube channel, and so you can forward it to your friends or review it. And then again, if you want to get a copy of the PowerPoint presentation, that was great. I think you covered everything. It was really phenomenal. So here's a question from Bob. How many grams of protein is too much?
Well, that depends. Just like everybody's different, and just like Parkinson's, there's no one answer. Generally speaking, you need about 0.8 to 1 grams of protein per kilogram. So they have to divide your weight in pounds by 2.2 to get your weight in kilograms, and then multiply that, and then say if you're 180, that's about 72 kilograms. So you need about 70 grams of protein. Too much protein is probably not harmful unless you have a risk for renal disease. It's certainly not going to impact your Parkinson's too much unless it interferes with your medication absorption.
If I could make an addendum to that.
Yeah, go.
The problem is with so many things with Parkinson's, there's all these recommendations. For example, the timing. I want to plan my meals and my eating schedule so that it doesn't interfere with social things. It doesn't interfere with my carbidopa absorption. And I've sort of driven myself batty trying to juggle all these variables. And the same thing happens when I have hypotension, which I sometimes have pretty severely. I love salt, so I add it to the diet. Can I take a salt tablet when I'm going to go out and work out? Will that make a difference?
It probably would. It could, but check with your doctor first. And my suggestion is live your life. Don't revolve your life around when you eat protein and your medication. Your medication can always be adjusted. Yes, protein can interfere with absorption in some people. Like I said, 30% of people don't have that problem. But if you're limiting yourself and living life well, then by always, if you're taking a dose of carbidopa, levodopa 6-8 times a day, there's no way that you'll get enough food into you and protein that you need and require. You won't be able, you'll become malnourished because you just can't eat that at that, that many different times during the day waiting, and because you'll run into the next dose. So it's really important to have balance.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's one really great takeaway from your approach. I've only heard it one other time before, and you did the same thing here on a talk on nutrition and weight loss in particular. And you had mentioned the 5 scoops of ice cream and, supplementing with syrups or whatever, and I was struck when I heard that for the first time. I was like, friggin' thank God. People with Parkinson's are always told what you can't do, finally go out and have some friggin' ice cream. And I think that that it is the kind of theme, the way you've approached this with moderation is a really important takeaway, that we want to be careful that we don't get too obsessive and forget the fact that we have to live our life and we have to experience joy and enjoy life. And it was also the story about the gentleman who was thinking he was going to have the feeding tube, and he said, my food is everything, my life is everything. The fact that they were able to find something for him, I think, is just amazing. Let's see who we have in a chat here. Okay, this is from Oxy. I follow a Mediterranean diet. I tried the keto diet, but it was impossible. I feel worse. Perhaps every person must follow the diet with organic food, vegetables. In my case, I cannot eat gluten, sugar, milk. Do you think if we follow a correct diet, we need to take supplements? I take black curare as I think it's black curare, I don't know, as antioxidants.
Like I said, foods have nutrients in them that we don't know about. And the nutrients in food are synergistic. There's a lot about Parkinson's we don't know, but there's a lot about nutrition we don't know. So that's kind of something to remember. So it's always best to get your nutrients from food. And if you're following a diet that is complete and has all of the protein, calorie, and vitamins, minerals that you need, then you shouldn't have to take a supplement. But the problem is when you start to eliminate entire food groups, and if you're with the specific things that if you can't tolerate gluten, sugar, and milk, the gluten is wheat products, and milk obviously has a lot of protein and calories and calcium. So those are things you might want to look at if you need to take a supplement.
Okay, great. So if you have a question, you don't want to type it, you can go ahead and unmute. Actually, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. So Marty, I noticed one thing, and thank you. Your presentation was just, wow. It was really wonderful, very enlightening. I found one thing with me is the dairy products. When the minute I have that, if I'm out to eat and I'm having cheese and crackers and, I try to incorporate some fruits and stuff into it, whatever I can. But the next day, boy, I can feel the effects, but those dairy products, it seems like that if I just over the consumption of my normal intake of dairy, I'll have it like a yogurt for lunch every day, but if I have extra cheeses or something throughout that day, I'm in trouble. The constipation is just unbearable.
Yeah, you might have a lactose intolerance. So usually that exhibits as diarrhea, but sometimes it can exhibit as constipation. So just practice moderation and don't overdo, and work the cheese into your diet every day, because you develop a tolerance to it with that. Or there are things like lactase enzymes that you can take, or talk it over with your primary care physician and tell him what symptoms you're having, and he can help you with get you to a dietitian that can evaluate your diet and to make recommendations for you.
Would when might something like Tums be appropriate? Like if you know you're going to have something, can you like just pop a Tums and then maybe that would make a difference? I'm not sure if that would have any effect on dairy or not, but
Well, not on dairy, but it might settle your stomach, and it's a good source of calcium. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, I usually don't get any stomach ache or anything from it. It's just the constipation. Oh my goodness.
well, you know, what Marty has said before, and exercise for constipation or movement, getting out there and taking a walk, you know, the whole digestive process is motor, you know, but it's assisted by gravity. So getting out there and jumping around and moving around is going to help move things down.
And hydration also. Make sure you're getting the fluids in every day.
Thanks, Audrey.
Can one more thing, Patrick, if I could, with Marty?
Yeah.
You know, the water intake, you know, because I drink a lot of water throughout the day. And I know there's a rule, I heard this from one nutritionist. You take your body weight, you divide it in half, and that's the number of ounces of consumption water intake you should have per day. Would you agree to that?
That's reasonable. You know, a general rule of thumb is 64 ounces a day, or just 8 glasses of water a day that we've heard for years. And 64 ounces is right about 2 liters of water. So that's what is usually recommended. And that's pretty consistent with what you've just said.
Thank you.
Let's see, Art, here we go. What about, well, okay. Art asks, what about small use of marijuana?
Well, it can certainly stimulate appetite, but yeah, I can't really comment on the use of CBD or THC or marijuana. I'm not that familiar with its use of Parkinson's. I know it's helpful to many people with managing symptoms at times, and it's definitely something you would want to talk with your physician about.
Yeah. There are also, I think I mentioned this all the time, but PCLA, the nonprofit I'm involved with, has a presentation on their YouTube channel that you can reference on marijuana. It's not really regulated, and the problem is there's not from what I've heard during these presentations, is it's a hard thing for the doctors to prescribe because there's different formulations, and you know you have non-responders and responders to pretty much everything, and you know, people respond to, you know, the marijuana vastly differently. So that becomes a tough one. But I have, you know, heard a lot of people saying that it can be helpful. So obviously check with your doctor, but certainly in terms of stimulating hunger, I'm sure it's pretty good for that.
There are also ointments and balms and topicals that you can use that aren't systemic, that if you're having rigidity or pain, they can be helpful.
We might want to have a specialist come in and talk to us about that. There's the THC and the
CBD.
CBD are the 2 primary components. The THC is the psychotropic aspect to it, and the CBD is not, but has some they're doing research now on the effects of it. I've found some of their ointments and salves with just the CBD to be really helpful in terms of pain relief, but it tends to be more temporary for me. But anyway, you know, before we wrap here, we're getting low on time. I'll make sure everybody has a chance to answer their questions. But one of the things you said early on, I found that it really stopped me, because it's something that I have noticed and always tread kind of carefully and lightly on, which is the fact that you said that placebos affect, the placebo effect is strong in Parkinson's. And I had kind of observed that, never ever verbalized that. And I didn't know that it was stronger in Parkinson's than, I just know the placebo thing can be very powerful. Do you have any information on how the placebo affects the Parkinson's community differently?
Well, you know that if we try that, you know, if we think something that's going to work, it will for the most part. And I don't know why, I don't know the science behind that, but that's been pretty reasonably well studied, and the placebo effect is lasting. Like, for instance, if you go to a chiropractor and have stem cells injected into somewhere, not your brain, and you think it's going to work, it does work for a period of time, and then it doesn't anymore because it's not doing what it's supposed to do. It's not getting to the dopaminergic neurons. So it's not treating the root cause of the Parkinson's. But there's a lot to be said about the power of the mind and thinking, and having a positive attitude helps Parkinson's. That's probably a placebo effect in some ways. So you can control how you react.
So Donna's iPad, I'm trying to mute, you're unmuted and I can't put yourself on mute, please. Any other last minute quote? Vincent, look, maybe it was you, Vincent. You got a question, you're off mute.
Yes, it had to do with the alternative almond milk. Is that?
Yeah, almond milk is fine. It doesn't really have protein or calories or the nutrients that are in regular milk, but I use almond milk all the time because I don't tolerate regular milk. So it's fun.
Great,
There's a question. Go ahead.
I think that was it. You're good, Vince, right? Okay.
Yes.
Marty, my question is about salt. Thank you for a great presentation. My question about salt and sugar in the diet was in the evening, I get a slump in the afternoon. In the evening, I get kind of very lightheadedness and dizziness and sometimes blurred vision. And I've been told to have more salt in my diet, but I don't want to take a lot of salt. So, sugar seems to leave it, the dizziness and the lightheadedness in the evening. But again, I know I take too much sugar, and so I try and cut down. But it seems to have a alternative effect, especially in the evening. And I wonder what salt and sugar you recommend. How much salt and sugar?
Well, it depends. Again, I think too much salt is not good for anyone, and too much sugar, moderation again. The typical American diet has about 4 grams of salt in it, or 6 or 8 grams of salt in it each day. And in other parts of the world, they eat less salt, but usually we recommend, 3 to 4 grams of sodium per day, which is like a no added salt type of diet. But if you're having the neurogenic orthostatic hypotension, adding a little bit of extra salt to your food when cooking or eating, then that can be helpful. The sugar part of it, I don't know that has an effect on blood pressure, but it can certainly impact your blood glucose, which can make you dizzy or lightheaded as well.
Yeah.
Plus, if you're eating a large meal and your body is working to metabolize and absorb those nutrients, then you might have some diversion of energy away from other parts of your body to focus on your stomach and your digestive tract.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So someone asked about these mucuna purines. That's also, that's a form of dopamine, L-dopa, that is available. And again, it's not regulated, so you don't really know how much you're getting or what quality you're getting. And many people, some people find some help with that. Again, talk to your doctor about that.
Art says, my neurologist thought I had a dizziness problem, but turned out to be an imbalance problem.
That's very true. That's why we need to exercise and strengthen our, do fall prevention and those types of things. Yeah.
Okay, so we're kind of winding down here. I'll give it another 10 seconds for you to chop in your question here. Okay.
I've seen reports of people finding some benefit with essential oils to improve sense of smell, even to recover to some extent.
If it works, then I don't think there's any harm in that. So, yeah.
Tracy says, this isn't really nutrition related, but do you recommend alternative treatments such as ozone therapy, or is that also a placebo effect? I live in Mexico and don't really have anyone to talk to. That's not so great. Well, you have us, Tracy. Do you want to
Yeah.
fill that one, or?
I'm not very familiar with ozone therapy, so I can't speak to that.
So pretty much I'll just speak to this briefly. You know, I was, like I said, I was really struck when Marty said the placebo effect is powerful in the PD community, because I've seen that. Just be aware, just be cautious, check things out with your doctor. You can try stuff, I guess, if your doctor says it's okay and not harmful. But what we're really looking for is strategies that are scientifically tested, confirmed, and repeatable, right? So we want to make sure that you know, we're not going down a rabbit hole and spending money on stuff that's not maybe going to be helpful, because it's not always the case, but there are predatory, there's a predatory industry out there that, you know, we're all teed up for it. And let me tell you, in every, whether you have Parkinson's or not, you know, we're all looking for quick fixes. We're all looking for shortcuts. We're all looking for ways to make things better. And just particularly, you know, especially if we're talking about the Parkinson's community, you know, just be careful. I've seen it firsthand, and you know, the placebo effect is real. I mean, you may get benefits from this stuff. So, you know, as long as it's safe, you know, give it a try, and hopefully it's sustainable. But make sure you check all of this stuff out with your doctors first. I've always been really, when I first got into exercise, you know, there, even in the exercise world, there were these, I don't know if you guys remember these things with these balance bands that, you know, these athletes would wear, and they would do these tests and they would immediately cause improvements in strength and balance. But the thing about it was not scientific. And what was occurring was a couple of different things, the mechanics of it, and the whole industry got kind of shut down because they were making these claims that were unsubstantiated. But what was happening was, these things were kind of working on principles of motor activation as well as placebo to increase the, like if I hold my hand here and I push down once and I had this weakness, if I'm going to try it again, that first one recruited more, there's going to be more strength in the second time, you know? So there were basically, Marty kind of addressed this early on in this presentation, that where there's some science that they extrapolate to another level without the proper evidence. So just be careful. You know, this forum that we have here, this discussion group, I want to keep it informative, but I also want us to be able to have kind of a free-flowing, open dialogue back and forth to you know, float a balloon on something if we want, and talk about it. But again, my approach has always been evidence-based. And within that world, there are some really encouraging, you know, tricks you can do. A lot of you who have been in my exercise class, I talk about, I'm all into working hard, but I'm also all into finding shortcuts. So, you know, if we can use stuff that is scientifically based in the exercise world, I guess what I'm talking about, to improve the way we're moving and our strength, then I'm all for it. Before we wrap, I'll just give one last moment here, and let's go ahead and give Marty a big round of applause again. Thank you so much, Marty. This was, I gotta tell you, you set the bar awful high. You said this is our first educational program, and I think, I don't think I've ever seen such a comprehensive and generous, I really think generous is a really good adjective to describe the way you've approached your presentation. So thank you for being vulnerable and sharing us with you know, your experience as well. Best thing to do is exercise and good food. Exercise and good food. I love that. All right. So